Hello, 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 and thank you for joining me for yet another podcast. Today's podcast is about separating. So I don't refer to it as divorce because not everybody is married. So I refer it to as separating or family law matter. And it's a little bit gross to think about, but usually the first week that legal practices are back from the Christmas break is known as like divorce week. And the reason for that is January is usually a big influx of people wanting to commence a family law matter. And I don't know how that is placed overseas, but in Australia, it's pretty well across the board in all the states. So if you're finding yourself in that situation, here are some tips for you. So first of all, I thought I'd just go through maybe the reasons as to why it happens in Christmas. I know when we had COVID, we had like a mass influx as well. And I don't know whether it's really died down from COVID either. I don't think it's as hectic as what it was, but I know COVID was a massive spike in family law matters across the board as well. So some of the factors that came in to that probably also correspond with factors that could come into it at Christmas time. But a reason that it may be happening at Christmas time is the increased stress that the holidays can have. So we all look forward to having the holidays, but then we have like the stress of kids being off school. And if you're working, wondering what to do with the kids, feeling guilty that you can't go away because you might not be able to afford it or you can't get that time off work, organizing, presents and food and all of that. It can be really, really stressful. Both, financial pressures and just, pressures in general. So that could be one reason. Another one is that people may have more time for reflection. So they may be on holidays and they have a time to think about the relationships that they have. And whether they work things out or whether they've mentioned that maybe things aren't going well. Time for reflection is also possibly one cause. I think that was kind of really what happened with COVID when we're all kind of locked down for like 2 years. It was like a lot of people just all of a sudden decided they can't live together. But I think a lot of that would have been the stress. Like we're being told we can't leave our houses. We had to homeschool our kids. Like there was a lot that went on with that. And, and Christmas is the same, except we're not locked down. We can leave our houses now. But sometimes just the break can make people think, New Year's resolution or starting 2025 fresh, that could be a possible reason. Unmet expectations and whether that's from the Christmas period or just in general. And if that's not communicated, that could lead into a separation or having issues. If you're struggling and, there's one person trying and that's not being received, that person might just go, you know what, I'm done. Or you both might be agreeing that, you can do counselling or something like that, or you're both acknowledging the relationship is over, whatever it might be. But unmet expectations and needs can be another reason why. Family and social pressures. So usually there's extended family. You may get along with them. You may not get along with them. So that can create issues sometimes, especially if they're referring to, your house is a mess or you still haven't finished that or, I don't agree with your parenting or whatever that might be. That can cause conflicts between couples as well. They're scrutinized, criticized by the other side, like as in like the in-laws, that could lead to something. Or like even siblings, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, for example. Post-holiday resolution, which is kind of what I've mentioned before, starting the new year differently. That could be another reason. I'm not saying I agree with any of these or that I don't agree, whatever it might be. I'm just simply providing suggestions as to why January might be really high for separations. I mean, legal practices only close for a couple of weeks. So, something's happened within those couple of weeks for people to get to this stage. So, but, post-holiday resolution, they might have been checked out for a little while, but they don't want to do it over the Christmas period. So they'll wait for, Christmas to be done, and, they want to get in before Easter. So that's kind of their gap that they feel that they can have that chat about separation or, whatever that might be. So emotionally exhausted, I think this would be a big one and would probably lead to a lot of separations. It'd be really difficult to try and get stats on this. We try to ask, without trying to be nosy. It's like, can we reconcile? Can we work this out? Can we engage a counsellor? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes there's addiction, whatever it might be. But I think a lot of it would be the emotional exhaustion of existing and not living, and having, you see someone's like, how are you? Yeah, same shit, different day. Like, how many people say that as a response? And, they mean it. They don't not mean it. So emotional exhaustion can be a big one. And, people say you have to look after yourself to look after other people. I know as a mother, and I'm assuming dads are the same. I'm not a dad, but as a mother, you don't do that. You put your kids forward, especially when they're babies, because, they can't do anything for themselves. And when you have little kids, it's the same. So I know I've definitely sacrificed my health over the past few years. And it wasn't until I got bloods done, I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, that's not real good. So I've started having to put myself first because my health isn't really, where it should be. And, it's from exhaustion. It's, getting the kids up to school, taking them to school, going to the office, picking them up from school, taking them to support, waking up the next day, doing the same thing, waking up the next day, doing the same thing. Then the weekend comes and you're trying to clean the house and do the washing and do the groceries and trying to do all the things, and you don't get that chance to rest. And that can be really taxing. So, but yeah, the emotional exhaustion is probably a factor in separating over the Christmas period. And I kind of touched on it before, spending extended time together. So, depending on how, you might work Monday to Friday, you might have a shift worker in the house. That might be the most time that you ever spend together as a family. And maybe, problems are more noticeable when you're together, whether you're arguing, whether you're not happy, whatever that might be. So that could happen. And again, I think that's pretty well kind of what happened in COVID. I think that would be a mixture of spending time together, but I think that was a factor of like people being emotionally exhausted and not having been in this situation before. That was kind of contributing to other things as well. So yeah, that's just a few reasons as to possibly why January is really high for separation inquiries. Now, if you're finding yourself in this situation, most legal practices won't be open till about mid-January. So we're heading up to Christmas now while I'm filming this. So if you are looking at possibly having that conversation, or you've snapped and maybe you've had that conversation pre-Christmas, just consider the emotional impact. So Christmas is meant to be like a magical time of year, especially when you have kids and you got the elf on the shelf and Santa and everything else. So I'm not saying don't not do it. If you're there, but consider the emotional impact that could have pre-Christmas. even maybe a little bit post Christmas as well. It could make, it could take away from the Christmas, I suppose, but at the same time, if you're not happy, maybe that's when it needs to be done. I'm not sure, but just consider the emotional impact that it could have at this time of year. Reflection. So maybe you might better have that conversation. Hey, I don't think things are going well. I'd quite honest, I don't think there's ever going to be a really good time to have that conversation. You may think that there is. It could be, maybe that is at Christmas time because that's the only time you get together. Maybe it's in school holidays. Maybe it's when the kids are at school because you don't have the kids at home. So I don't think there's ever going to be an ideal situation. There's probably better situations than others, but it is what it is, and you just do what you feel is right for you. But the reflection time, again, you've had that time, you might be off together, one person might be off, you might be at work, whatever it is, and you're reflecting that, okay, so we're going into the year the same as every other year. Something's got to change, or, maybe you're out then. So consider that. Children's well-being. So it should always be that the kids are at the forefront of every decision, and it's in the best interest of the kids, and that often cannot be the case, or is not the case, which is really sad, and whatever angle that comes from. But consider how the kids might take it. I don't think there's any right. There's probably, maybe some not ideal ways to tell kids, but it's probably always going to be an awkward conversation. It's probably the hardest decision that you've had to make in your life by doing this. So, just take into account the kids' well-being. You might want to do it at Christmas time because they have more time off, and more time off before they head to school. That could be what you're factoring in. Maybe you've lined up something to somewhere to move to, and you're doing that in the Christmas period because that's the time that you've got off. But just be really careful. I wouldn't be having conversations around kids at all about any of this. I wouldn't be bagging people out in front of your kids either. Be careful of the language you use. So it's like, I don't know. So I have to take you to your dad's, or have to take you to your mum's house. It's not necessarily the words you're using, but it's the tone and the body language you're using as well. So just be mindful of that as well. Consider the financial considerations as well. So I'm not saying if you can't afford it, don't do it. There are options out there in relation to finance. Consider, do you know what the asset pool is? Do you know what your debt is? Do you even have access to bank accounts? I know in a lot of relationships, one person handles the finances. Is that something you need to be across before you separate? Do you need to make sure you get internet banking, or, where you bank, or whatever it might be? So take the financial considerations into account as well. Having a support network, which would make a really big difference. So whether that's a friend, a family member, a colleague, whatever it might be, just having that support network could be really helpful. If you find yourself kind of getting into a stage where you're not mentally well, please reach out to, you have Lifeline, you have Talk to Me Bro, you have heaps of options out there to call up. I think there's texting options for some as well if you're not quite handling it. Try to avoid hasty decisions. So if you're both yelling at each other and you might say things that you don't mean, or you do mean and then you regret, or whatever it might be how you've said it. Just be careful of making any hasty decisions. If you're both worked up, the conversation probably isn't going to go too well, and it might be best just to kind of end it and you both go cool off, because if you keep going at each other, it's probably not going to be very nice to, and it might be really hard to try and get that kind of back to head towards a separation and an agreement. So have that in mind. as well. You might want to consider counselling. So that's one of the first things we ask. We ask, can the relationship be safe? There's caveats to this. Like if there's domestic violence, we wouldn't be asking you to go see a counsellor or something. In some cases, with marriage, a counsellor, it's suggested that you need to go to. But counselling is an option. We have had clients get back together. We've had clients have the opportunity to calm down and kind of work things out with a counsellor. We have gone through a whole property settlement, and then the client at the end tell us that they got back together 4 months ago, and we're like, that's amazing, but you've just spent all of this money, you've just divided everything up. So if you have gotten back together, please don't leave it to orders are signed and stuff separated, because it'll save you probably a lot of money, a lot of headache as well. But yeah, so consider counselling. If there's addiction involved, you might want to go get help or suggest help or whatever that might be. So counselling can be a good one. You might want to consult with a lawyer just for some general advice in relation to what to do if you're not sure on what to do. I said most legal practices won't be back until mid-January, and then you're probably not going to get in to see a lawyer until maybe February. Like they're gonna, we're backlogged. That first week back is usually very hectic. We have heaps of emails, we have heaps of voicemails. So even if you do call on that first day back, chances are it's probably going to be a few weeks before you can get in to see somebody anyway. If you kind of are there, just think about how you're going to communicate that with your family. Again, it might, your intentions might be good as to how you tell maybe your partner or your family, and maybe it might not come out that way. So don't be hard on yourself if it's not come out how you intended. I mentioned before, it's probably one of the hardest things you've had to do in your life. So it may not come out how it's meant to come out, but it is what it is. It's done. So, but you might want to have some practice runs, talking in front of the mirror as to how maybe you'll do it. You might want to put some notes down. You might go into that conversation and you just have a massive mental blank, but just consider how you would communicate that with friends and family, or maybe you decide to not tell friends and family, and because you might be trying to work it out or whatever that is. So that's something else to keep in mind as well. And if you follow along, you know that I have created a course called Empowered Separation, which pretty well covers all of that. So there we just added 2 lessons, 2 additional lessons today. But it's essentially the start of a separation and what that may look like. So it's your first probably 1 to 4 meetings with a lawyer. Most lawyers probably charge about $5.50 per hour. So, if there's a way that we can reduce legal fees, and then you go to a lawyer and it's right, I've got a bit of an idea of what this is. Here is all my things that I'm told that you're going to need. That's going to get your matter off to a good start. Your lawyer will probably be happy with you because they're not chasing you. You've got everything there. It could be peace of mind that you're organised and you're educated as to what happens. Usually when you hear about family law, you only hear about the bad stuff. You don't hear about the good stuff. And there are good stories. So some people come to us and they have worked out an option. Obviously, it can go to the complete other end, and they despise each other, and it's really difficult to try to work with. So, yes, but it is called Empowered Separation. We will put the link below if you want to check it out, especially this time of year. So legal practices that would now be closed. So if you want to get a head start into the new year, perhaps that's something that you want to do. So so just be kind to yourself. If you are looking at doing this, or you have your partner's had that conversation with you that they're looking at ending it, try not to don't react with emotion, which is easier said than done, but at least take care of yourself, and don't be hard on yourself. And if you can have those lines of communication, again, DV would be the caveat to this. I'll just be recommending that you be safe and your family, your kids be safe if you have kids. But keeping the line of communication open, it might not be easy at the start. You might have to give yourselves a few weeks, a few months, whatever it might be, before you can come together again. And that's perfectly okay too. So don't think you have to get everything done in a week. You don't need to do that. But the Empowered Separation course goes through all of that, and it goes through the emotional toll that a separation has as well, because most lawyers don't have time to deal with both. It's kind of you're a matter number, and yep, this is what it is, and this is the law type thing. But there's definitely an emotional side that I feel needs to be spoken about, and you have the opportunity to do both the legal and the emotional side as well to help you get through it, because it is a really difficult time, and it could be the most difficult time that you have in your life. And we obviously don't want you making decisions that you're going to regret, or that you can't undo. So check out Empowered Separation if you think that might be good for you. And yeah, as always, if anyone needs to reach out, please do. Thanks.